The voice that comes just before you sleep, it is not loud. It does not interrupt your thoughts or pull you away from what you are doing. In fact, most people don't even notice it at first, because it only appears when everything else begins to fade. It comes in that quiet space between waking and sleeping, when your body feels heavy, your eyes are almost closed, and your mind slowly loosens its grip on the day. That is when it begins, not as a sound exactly, but as something softer, something closer, a presence that feels like a thought, but not quite your own. He had never paid attention to it before. Like most nights, he would lie in bed, scrolling through his thoughts long after he put his phone away, replaying conversations, imagining scenarios, overthinking things that didn't matter anymore. Sleep never came easily to him. It always felt like something he had to chase, and the more he chased it, the further it moved. One night he found himself staring at the ceiling again, his room silent, except for the faint hum of the night outside. His eyes were tired, his body exhausted, but his mind refused to slow down. Thought after thought kept rising like waves that would not settle. He turned to his side, closed his eyes, and tried to force himself into sleep, but forcing never worked. Minutes passed, maybe more, he wasn't sure. Then slowly something changed, not in the room, not around him, but inside. The thoughts that were once loud began to soften, like someone had turned the volume down. Without asking, the tension in his body loosened slightly. His breathing slowed without effort. In that quiet space, just as he was about to drift away, he heard Ita's voice, soft, distant, almost like it was coming from somewhere very far, and yet at the same time very close. It didn't start with words. It started with a feeling, a calm, steady presence that wrapped around his awareness without making him. Allah, his eyes didn't open, he didn't move. Just listen. Then slowly the voice formed into something clearer. You don't have to hold on anymore. The words were gentle, almost like they were placed carefully into his mind rather than spoken. He wasn't scared. That was the strange part. If anything, he felt calmer than he had in a long time. What is this? He whispered quietly, not sure if he was speaking out loud or just thinking. The voice didn't respond immediate. Wait, if giving space for his mind to settle even more, and then it came again, softer than before. It's the moment you stopped trying. He felt something shift inside him. Small release, like a tight knot loosening slowly. Thoughts which had been racing only moments ago were now distant, like they belonged to someone else. What? Do you come? He asked, barely aware of his own voice. There was a pause. Not empty, but peaceful. And then, because this is the only time you finally listen. The answer didn't confuse him. It made sense in a way he couldn't explain. All day his mind was busy, filled with noise, filled with distractions, filled with effort. But now, here in this quiet space where nothing was required of him, where nothing needed to be solved, he was open. The voice continued, not as a lecture, not as instructions, but as something softer, like a quiet reminder. You spend your days trying to control everything, trying to fix everything, trying to understand everything, and by the time night comes, you are too tired to carry it all. He felt that truth deeply, like it had always been there, just never noticed. You don't need to solve your life before you rest, the voice whispered. You only need to let it be unfinished. His breathing grew slower, his body heavier though. Need to think, the need to figure things out, began to dissolve, but he still had one question: is this real? He asked. The answer came almost immediately. Does it need to be? He didn't know how to respond because whatever it was, it felt real enough to me. Voice grew quieter now, almost blending into the silence. Don't hear me because I arrive. You hear me because everything else finally leaves. That sentence stayed with him, not loudly, not forcefully, but gently, like something meant to stay. Felt sleep approaching now, not as something he had to chase, but as something that was naturally arriving. The voice spoke one last time, let go, and for the first time in what felt like forever, his thoughts didn't disappear. They simply stopped holding him. His body relaxed completely, and without effort, without resistance, without fear, he drifted not into darkness, but into something softer, something calmer, something like peace. And just before he lost awareness completely, the voice, Fadad na, gonjas, no longer needed. And when morning came, it didn't feel like waking up from the same restless night. It felt different, like if something inside him had been gently rearranged. While he slept, he sat up slowly, looking around his room. Everything looked the same, yet nothing felt the same. Usually his mornings began with a rush of thoughts, reminders, worries, unfinished things waiting for him, but this time there was a passé, small space between waking up and thinking, and in that space there was come. He didn't question it, he didn't try to understand it, he simply allowed it to be. There the day moved forward, as it always does. People talk in time, passing, small problems appearing and disappearing, but he noticed something. He wasn't reacting the same way. Things that would normally pull him into overthinking didn't hold him for long. Thoughts came, but they didn't stay. They passed like clouds moving slowly across an open sky, and without realizing it, he carried that quiet calm from the night into his day. As if the voice hadn't left completely, it had just become part of him. That night when he returned to his bed, he didn't feel the same resistance he used to. There was no pressure to sleep, no frustration waiting beneath the surface. He laid down, closed his eyes, and simply rested, not trying, not forcing, just being there. For a while nothing happened, no what sudden calm, just stillness. And for a moment a small doubt appeared. Was it just one night? Was it just his imagination? But instead of chasing that question, he let it pass like the thoughts, and slowly as his body relaxed and his mind soft, familiar quiet space returned. This space between holding on and letting go, and in that space the voice came again, even softer this time, almost like it was already inside him. You remembered. He didn't open his eyes, he didn't move, he didn't listen. I try, he whispered gently. You didn't try, the voice replied. You allowed. A small calm spread through him, cause this time it felt easier, more natural, as if he didn't need guidance anymore. Just a reminder. Why does it only come at night? He asked. The answer came slowly like a breath. Because at night you stop pretending to be in control. That truth settled deep within him. All day he carried effort, expectations, noise, but at night all of that in that loosening, something real could finally be heard. The voice continued. One day you won't hear me anymore. His breath paused slightly. Why? Cause you won't need to. There was no sadness in that answer, only certainty. He understood then the voice was never something separate. It was not a stranger, not a mystery, not something outside of him. It was something deeper, something quieter, something he had always had but never listened to. It only felt like a voice because silence was new to him. His breathing slowed even more, his body sinking deeper into rest before sleepily took him. He asked one last question. What happens when you're gone? And this time, the answer didn't come as words. It came as a feeling, a calm, steady feeling that spread through his chest like warmth. Within that feeling, the meaning was clear. Nothing changes because I am not leaving, I am becoming you. And with that understanding, he let go completely. No questions, no resistance, no need to listen anymore, because the voice he was waiting for, one that came just before sleep, was never separate, was the quiet version of himself, the one that only appeared when everything else disappeared. Now he knew how to find it, without waiting for the night, without waiting for sleep, just by being. As he drifted once more into that soft, peaceful darkness, there was no voice this time, only silence, but it was no longer empty. It was full, Finalia's own. And from that night onward, something subtle but lasting changed within him. He no longer waited for the voice as something separate that would arrive and guide him. Instead, he began to recognize it in the quiet moments of his day, in the pause before reacting, in the breath he took when things felt overwhelming, in the stillness between two thoughts. It speaking, not directing, just present, like a quiet awareness that didn't need words anymore. At first, it felt unfamiliar to carry that silence into his waking life. He had spent so long being surrounded by noise, both outside and inside, that calmness almost felt strange. But slowly, he got used to it, stopped filling every empty moment with distraction. He allowed silence to exist without trying to escape it, and in that silence, he started understanding things about himself that he had never noticed before. He noticed how many of his worries were repeated patterns, not actual problems. He noticed how often he tried to control outcomes that were never in his control. He noticed how much energy he wasted resisting what already was. With that awareness came a quiet shift. He didn't try to fix everything at once. He simply began to respond differently, more patiently, more gently, more honestly. And as he did that, life itself began to feel less heavy, not easier in a perfect way, but lighter in a real way. There were still challenges, still uncertain days, still moments where old habits tried to return, but now there was space between him and those moments, a space where he could choose how to respond instead of reacting automatically. And in that space, the voice lived, not as sound but as presence. One evening, as the sun slowly disappeared and the world soft into night, he found himself sitting quietly, doing nothing in particular, no distraction, just sitting on. For the first time, he didn't feel the need to fill that moment. He simply stayed there, breathing, observing, being. And in that stillness, he realized something that brought everything together. The voice that once felt like it came before sleep was never tied to sleep at all. It was tied to only appeared at night, because that was the only time he allowed himself to be quiet enough to hear it. But now he didn't need the night anymore. He didn't need to wait until he was exhausted or overwhelmed or unable to think. He could find that same calm, that same clarity anytime he chose to slow down. That realization changed his relationship with everything, with his thoughts, with his emotions, with his life, because now he knew peace was not something that came and went. It was something that was always there beneath the noise, him to return to it. And as night fell once again, and he lay down in his bed, there was no anticipation, no waiting for a voice to arrive. He closed his eyes gently, his breath slow and steady, his mind quiet without effort. And in that quiet, there was no need for words anymore, no need for guidance, for anything at all, because everything he had been searching for in that voice he had already found within himself. And this time, as sleep embraced him softly, there was no beginning, no ending, no voice, only peace, stupendous and finale resonant. In that final quiet moment, as the night wrapped gently around him, there was nothing left to understand, nothing left to search for, nothing left to hear, because the voice that once guided him into sleep had fulfilled its purpose. It didn't disappear, became silent in a different way, a silence that no longer needed to speak, lay there completely still, his breath soft, his body at ease, his mind no longer reaching for answers. And for the first time, the space before sleep was not a place of was a place of peace, a place where everything simply rested as it was, no thoughts to chase, no feelings to control, no need to hold on, just calm, just stillness, just being. And in that stillness, he understood the final truth. The voice was never something that came to him, it was something he returned to again and again, until one day he no longer had to return, because he never left his eyes closed gently, without effort. His awareness softened without resistance, and the sleep took him fully. There was no separation between him and that quiet calm anymore, no distance between him and peace. One continuous silence, deep, warm and listen. In that silence there was nothing missing, nothing misplaced, nothing undone, only rest, pure and complete. As if the night itself was holding him on. This time he didn't need a voice, because he had finally learned how to listen even in silence. Thank you for allowing me to be a part of your night. May you find deep peace and restful sleep. Wishing you the sweetest dreams. If you liked it, please like, comment and subscribe. Bye.